I literally almost had to fight and call back my old ways to fight an A-list action hero because he was behaving so badly.
Wow.
And he was intoxicated and picking on people. But with love, with understanding, with patience, we can work through all of this.
Welcome to the Be Better broadcast. Check it out. If you're looking for a strategy today to help you take your life to the next level, if you are looking for a dose of motivation or inspiration or a story of someone who may have had it worse than you so that you can realize, damn, things really aren't as bad as I think they are, then this conversation is going to be for you. I don't want to spoil any of this man's story. Today we are joined by guest John Petrelli, all the way from Texas. And for those of you who do not know John Petrelli has been a professional fitness coach for over 3 decades, having worked alongside some of the biggest names in the entertainment industry, from Grammy award-winning recording artists to A-list Hollywood actors. In 2021, John's life took an unexpected turn when he became paralyzed with Guillan-Barre Syndrome, a rare autoimmune disease that landed him in the ICU. John needed to rely on his mental strength to overcome this disease. Through this experience, he wrote the book Confessions of a Hollywood Trainer, and it became an instant Amazon #1 new release. John has dedicated his new lease on life to helping others find their inner strength to overcome the obstacles they are facing. You're going to take away at least a 4-step process today that will help you to change your life no matter where your life is currently, as well as hearing a story from someone who has went through a lot of crap in their life and continue to persevere to be where he is now. When you take even just one thing away from this conversation with John, all that we ask you is to share this show with just one other person who could use it as well. We're not going to show you ads. We don't have sponsors because we don't want to interrupt your experience and because you are the #1 part of the Be Better family. So thank you very much for everything that you do. Without further ado, the man, the myth, John Petrelli himself. John, it's great to have you on the Be Better broadcast.
Oh, it's great to be here, buddy. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for giving us a platform to tell our stories, because without this vehicle, so many ears won't hear this. And if we help one person, Brandon, I am super excited about that, brother.
100%, brother. Isn't it fascinating how there are so many different individual media outlets now? Anyone can go out there and get a microphone and get a camera and really share their story and spotlight other people to share their stories. I mean, we're in a world that used to be overrun with bad news, right? You got the deaths, you got the fires, you've got all the things going on, the wars, the battles, but now we can inject the good news and the inspiration. So right back at you. I'm grateful that you're out there sharing your story and you're continuing to do what you do. And I'm excited to talk with you, brother.
Same here. And, it's a big world, as you just said, and we can find different things if we look for them, but it's also a small world because you're in upstate New York and I'm originally from a small farm town in upstate New York. And here we are talking together, which is amazing.
It's wild. So it's funny because our last guest, James Bracken, is also from upstate New York. He's 45 minutes from me. Frankfurt, where you're from, is 2 hours from me. So the last 2 guests on the show, we're all in the same area. Obviously, you've moved on, and we'll go over your story and how you went from where you are to California to Texas. But it's just funny how small the world really is. So let me ask you this, and a lot of people don't know this. You were born in Frankfurt. You lived your childhood there in upstate New York. But at the very young age of 18, right when you were supposed to become an adult, you were arrested at 18. So how does one grow up in upstate New York in this small town, and then as soon as you hit 18, boom, you're arrested and life changes for you forever? How did that look?
Wow. So it was a scary moment. It's a moment I carried a lot of shame with for a long time, but I have to even roll the camera back a little bit before then, because the things that happened prior to that really kind of cultivated who I was at 18. And I want to make this point, Brandon, because I think it's very important that no matter what I say here, or I take full responsibility for everything I did. There were people that had my situation growing up or whatever that didn't act out the way I did. So I have to take full responsibility. It wasn't my peer group. It wasn't my upbringing by my parents. It was my choices and my decisions. That being said, I can kind of get into what I believe cultivated a lot of fear and anger in me that just manifested itself in action, horrible actions at 18, if you want me to get into that.
Yes, please. I'd love for you to roll it back. How did it, because just for those listening, you went from living in this small town to being arrested at 18 to then moving to California to train these A-list actors and that everyone knows, everyone's heard of, right? To then writing your book and being diagnosed. So, I mean, you have a crazy story. So how did this all begin?
Yeah, and I love that you bring up that point because I want everybody to know that if I can do this, we'll get into it. I had dyslexia, I got arrested, I had violence issues, became paralyzed. I literally passed classes in high school because teachers didn't want to see me again. And if I can do that, literally you can do anything. Imagine what you can do as an individual, because it's all possible if you're willing to put in the work, if you're willing to dream a little bit, if you're willing to surround yourself with people that are going to lift you up, but also keep you accountable when you're doing the wrong thing. So my parents are from Italy. They were born in Italy. My mom and dad, I'm first generation American. My mom is a 4'11" dynamite package of energy and cooking and love. If you drive by Frankfurt to go to Syracuse and you stop by my house, you'll leave 7 pounds heavier because she's going to feed you. She's going to love you. She's amazing. I love her. And my dad was amazing in his own way too. And my dad was born in 1921 and grew up during the Depression. And his father had a whole nother family that they were unaware of. And that kind of crafted my dad's move forward. And he went into the military at 18. My dad was in World War II. He was in Korean War and he was in the Vietnam War. He served in 3 wars. So things to him that may be common for other people, like emotions of caring or love, or may have been seen as weakness. So I don't blame my dad for that. He had the tools that he had for the life that he lived, and he used them to the best of his ability. But it created resentment and fear from in our relationship, where I was always afraid of my father. I couldn't ever voice my opinion. I could never state anything because he was a general and he kind of raised me as private first class. So growing up, this relationship and this dynamic, I always felt like I was never good enough. I felt like I was stupid in some ways. Sadly, I was not up to par in scholastics. And it started, that fear that I always lived with started manifesting itself into anger. And as I got older, that anger exploded into violence. And there's a lot of nooks and crannies in that childhood. But at 18 years old, I had lost my identity. I didn't excel anymore at sports. I didn't feel like I had affection from or affirmation from my father. And I started getting an identity as someone that was known for violence or fighting, and it kind of snowballed in a negative way, where I was getting affirmation of being this tough guy and living an identity that really hurt my soul at the time, because I know it didn't match what I wanted to be, what my true calling was. So if we flash forward to 18 years old, I graduate by the skin of my teeth. It's the last week before we're supposed to go to college. The only college that'll accept me is a junior college in upstate New York, a community college. And we're going to have one last party in Utica, New York, is where I went to school, called Fireworks Over Utica. And in that night, there's all kinds of violence going on. There's mobs of kids. I saw several fights happening. In fact, I never really said this in any podcast or any story, but there were 2 fights that I saw in that night that didn't involve me. And I wanted to help the person that was getting beat up. I wanted to assist them. I wanted it to stop, but I didn't have the self-courage. I didn't have the self-confidence to step in and just go against what the norm was. And I remember seeing that, and it hurt me inside that I wasn't brave enough to step forth and do something, or at least verbalize something. But that night changed my life, because as we got through all this madness of Fireworks Over Utica, we make it back to our car without incident. I ended up getting into an altercation with 2 guys, and we can get into the details of it or not, but they just had gotten out of prison, and they had probably more reason from abuse in their life as kids to be acting out than I ever did. Whether it was alcoholism, violence, they had, more reason to do that than I did. Long story short, a guy squares up with my friend, is going to punch my friend in the face without even thinking. I clear my friend out and I kick this individual in the face. And
Okay.
for a brief second, I'm actually proud of myself. And then he hits the ground and the back of his head cracks open on the curb
Wow.
and his head splits open. And there's hundreds of people around, and like my friends are applauding me for it in their own way. And I suddenly have a realization, this person may die. This person, he's not waking up. Blood is pouring out of the back of his head. And in the melee, somebody grabs me from behind, and he had a individual with him who I later find out is his brother. And I think that it's him or somebody's grabbing me. And I turn around to face this individual, and I go to take a punch. And unbeknownst to me, it's an undercover police officer that had seen everything.
Mm.
Slapped a handcuff on my right wrist. So now I go from possibly going to college to striking an individual and trying to attack a police officer. And I get slammed to the ground and my head's ringing. I'm trying to process everything. And I get put into a police car. And here I am at 18, sadly being super selfish about what is going to happen in my life, not even really thinking of the person laying on the ground who's still unconscious. The police try to revive him. He's not waking back up. Then the fire department comes. They're unable to resuscitate him. And then the ambulance comes.
Yeah.
And literally in a moment's notice, my whole life was changing. And, for many years, there's a lot of shame connected with this. There's, I can't go back and change anything. And I can't change what I did. But, I've dedicated my life to moving forward and helping people that may identify with either my situation, that individual situation, and change their life. So I have to, I get arrested that night. I get brought to jail. I have to work my way through the legal system, and deal with all of that that's going on. But at that point in my life, I start changing and making a realization that I need to change my environment. I need to change my peer group. Not to say it's my friend's fault, but I wasn't strong enough as an individual to handle the dynamic of our friendship and what that meant. And I wish I could tell you, Brandon, that was my absolute bottom, but unfortunately it was the start of my bottom.
Wow.
It was the start of my process, and there were many more things that happened, but it was really the start of it. And I want people to understand that you don't have to have an extreme bottom like that. You don't have to hit rock bottom like that to change your life. You can change your life in an instant because you decide to.
Yes.
Unfortunately for me, there's an Italian term called testa dura, which means hard head, and I'm rightfully accused of that. It took a little bit of an extreme event to change my life. And so I made my way through the court system. I ended up making my way through college. I had another couple incidents happen, and one of them that was super extreme where we got into a fight on New Year's Eve, and an individual said after the fight that he was going to kill me. He said, and he was known for carrying a gun. And
hey, if it's okay,
ask any question you want,
because I want to get there for sure, but I want to ask you a couple questions when it comes to this first, your upbringing with your father specifically, but the fight you got into. So my first question is, did this kid survive, the one that you kicked in the face?
Yeah, so he did, and I've tried my best to follow through, and I've made it within the next year. I want to reach out to him. So he survived. They revived him. They put me in the back of a police car, and then they put me in the back of a police van, and they arrested his brother too. And they put us both together in this van, which is crazy. Here's a brother thinking that his brother may die. And here I am back in there, and they put us both in there. And I had to sit. I sat there. I don't want it to sound like I had to sit there like it was torture for me. I sat there and watched that person unconscious for probably 5 minutes of my life. We'll just, I want people to understand that your thoughts are inevitably what you become. Because I had thought up until that point for several years that I was either going to end up in jail or I was going to end up dead.
You were thinking that before this altercation?
100% over and over.
How come? Why those thoughts?
Because I had fear that I was always living with, and I had fear, and I didn't have a healthy release for that fear. and I knew that I couldn't control my anger. And when that fear came into anger, my only way that I could expound it at that age was in violence. When I
Yes.
saw something, if I saw somebody bullying something or I saw something that I thought was wrong, my immediate action was violence. So for years I had thought I would end up in jail or I would end up dead, and I was getting it right. And I was sitting there having that realization in the back of the police car with my hands throbbing from the handcuffs going, I had thought this the whole time, and now here it is. And now at 51, I take such care in what my thoughts are because I know that I can manifest the opposite, right? If I can manifest without even knowing that fear and anger are going to equal violence and that's going to equal either jail, prison, or death, man, I came close to both of those things several
Mhm.
times. And so, yeah, that individual lived, and I've made it a mission for within the next 12 months. I want to reach out to that individual, and whatever he feels, he feels. I can't put my feelings on him, but I want to, oh man, I want to apologize. I want to say sorry. I want to see how I can help them. I just want to reach out and see what they're open to doing. But yes, he lived.
Well, I think it's great you take responsibility for that situation, and at the same time, without that situation ever happening, you wouldn't be where you are at this moment. And I don't know this man. Have you spoken to him since? Have you been able to reach out?
No, I haven't. I know their names, but I don't want to put that out there.
Of course.
But no, I have never spoken to them. I had seen different things in the police reports and whatnot,
Yeah.
and what their life was like, and so I feel horrible that I played a negative part in their life.
Yeah, well, who knows what that negative part led them to in their
Right.
life. Maybe it created a positive transformation of some sort in their life. But as you said, responsibility is the only thing that you can take in a situation like that. Right? So I'm curious to hear, with this inability to handle and channel this fear that you experienced in your mid-teen years, even before this altercation, you're living with your father, who
Yes.
is this 3-time war veteran, right? Who's experienced much altercation, who's experienced much combat, who experienced much fear, right? How did your father, from your observation, handle fear himself, or did he not show it? And did he pass down to you how to handle fear, whether it was in a good way or a bad way?
That's a great question. So my father never really expressed much emotion because I think in that generation and in his profession, it may have been seen as weakness. So we went a lifetime with him never really talking about his experiences in war until his last year or two of his life. Any of those things that he had to deal with. I know for sure my father dealt with PTSD. It wasn't a thing that was even spoken about or identified back then, but he would wake up with night terrors. He would scream in the middle of the night. He had malaria that would he got from, I believe, Vietnam, that would appear a couple times a year. So unfortunately, we never really had those conversations. So I don't know, how he dealt with it. I know he kept a lot bottled inside, and I can only imagine the demons that he had to deal with. Because at the later years of his life, he did show me and did share a few things. He showed a photo album of when he was in the Korean War. And one thing that stands out to me is that there was photos of piles of human bodies. And the thing that really stood out too, there was like farm animals mixed in with that. And it was a mountain of human bodies that was being pushed with a bulldozer over a cliff to get rid of it. And the thing that he told me that really stood out was he's like, you couldn't even believe like the smell, just the smell alone would change your life. But he had to see so many horrible things that he couldn't express. And I want guys to know out there, sometimes as men, we kind of keep this bottled inside. And for our mental health, it's not healthy to do that. That it's much better to have a conversation and let that out with someone you trust than it is to bottle that up inside and let it manifest itself in a negative way like it did in my life. So I wish I could have had those conversations. There's probably much we could have both learned from that.
Do you have kids?
I have two boys, yes.
How old are they?
12 and 9. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Excellent example. So let me ask you, if you, well, maybe not a great example because you're not your father,
Right.
right? But let's say you were speaking to a 12-year-old, 12 to 15-year-old who
Hmm.
was in a very similar situation to you, and they say, John, just what do I do? I've got all these fears. I have all these thoughts. What would you say to that person who was in that similar home environment?
Sure. First off, I would say it's okay. It's okay. You need to be as kind to yourself as you would be to other people, and we can work through this. You're not the first person to have these thoughts. You're not the first person to feel this way, and you're not going to be the last person. But with love, with understanding, with patience, we can work through all of this. So tell me a little bit more about your situation, and I'm sure together we can help this. And if we need more help, we'll go and seek that. But I want you to feel safe about what you're saying. I want you to know it's all right. And I want you to know that you can tell me anything, and I'm not going to judge you harshly. I'm not going to judge you negatively because I love you.
That's
That's what I would say.
beautiful.
Thank you, man.
Damn, brother. That's amazing. It almost sounds like you said those same things to your two boys.
I don't think I've necessarily said that, but I think that I probably go so much in that area now because it wasn't something that was in mind. So maybe I even do it too much. My kids are probably like, they're probably like, yeah, Dad, we know you love us.
Yep.
But for me, at 20 years old, when I ended up leaving upstate New York because I had to, at 20, almost going on 21, I had a couple $100 in my pocket and I had that death threat happen to me. And I made a phone call to a pivotal person in my life. And I said, he was in California, my friend Daryl Hagan. And I said, listen, my brother, I need to leave or I'm going to end up in jail or I'm going to end up dead. And he said, I don't have any room for you in the house, but if you want to sleep on the floor, you could sleep on the floor. And it was the best opportunity I ever had. And my parents drove me to the airport, Brandon. This is back in the day before TSA. And they drove me to the airport and they were able to walk me to the plane. And
Wow.
at 21 years old, that was the first time I'd ever heard my father say, I love you. And he called me son. And he said, son, I love you. And it hit me to my core. And and I make sure that, man, life is short. Anybody that I is in my life that I love, I want them to always know that I love them. And so, I got on a plane at 20 and years old, and I felt like the weight of the world was coming off my shoulders. And little did I know that my whole future would be there. I would find what my passion was. I would find what my vocation is. I would start transcending being selfish in thinking about why is this happening to me? Woe is me, and start focusing on helping other people. And I went to California to be a trainer. And really, in reality, my man, I thought I was going there and my profession would be helping people, but I found out that as I helped them on their journey and they invited me into their life, into the intimate areas of their life, they were healing my soul as I thought I was helping them. They were really paying me back tenfold and just being part of crafting their future and being part of their wellness and their health.
Yeah. Well, that's the most intimate place you can be, is helping people with what is most important, which is your health. If you have health, if you don't have health, you have nothing, right? So it in itself is such an intimate place to be. So when you're in California now, you go there with the intention, it sounds like, to be a trainer for people,
Mhm.
right? Those people weren't necessarily in your intentions. Some of the people that everyone in the world knows, these A-list individuals, right? So how did that happen? So you're sleeping on the floor. You're like, what do I do now that I'm here with $500 in my account or whatever it was? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, it's crazy. So here I am. I come from this small farm town, 2,000 people. I had this dream. It turns over to be a trainer. I go out there first, forget being a trainer. I was working landscaping. I was working loss prevention, catching shoplifter. I was working as a bouncer while I studied to be a trainer. I did everything and anything I could to put a few dollars in my pocket and eat another can of tuna fish while I was sleeping on the floor, right? But those times I look back are the best times because they made me literally and physically, figuratively hungry. I was hungry because I had no money for food. And I was hungry because I wanted something better out of my life. So I started studying to be a trainer. And in 1993, somewhere around there, way back, way before most of your listeners were ever alive, there was one test that I knew of for training. It was from the American Council on Exercise, and I studied to go and take that in person at San Diego State University. I saved up the money to take the test, and I went and took it. And it was probably the first test I passed in the last 20 years. And I passed that test, and I just started in this small town called Temecula, California. It's near San Diego. And I literally had a couple $100 to my name, and I put together flyers, and I paid some kids to pass out flyers, and my phone started ringing instantly. And I didn't have the answers to the questions that people were asking, like, how much do you charge? Do you have a gym? I didn't have any of these answers. So if people think you have to have it all figured out, it's not the case. And in fact, I was so young that I felt embarrassed that adults were calling me that I would disguise my voice and make it deeper because I thought I'd sound more important when they called me on the phone.
Wow.
And what I would prepare, like I'd be rehearsing in the mirror ahead of time, because back in the day we had a thing called the answering machine. And so 3 people would call and inquire about training, and I would call them back. And here I am in this deeper voice going, yes, I'd like to speak, returning your phone call about training. And so it started from there. And I was blessed in the sense that I ended up getting one client, and it was $12 an hour. And it was the best $12 I'd ever made in my life. And I just started rolling, and I got another client, and I got another client. And before you know it, within 6 months, I was working 40 hours a week and just loving what I was doing. Now I'm immersed in helping people. Now I'm immersed in changing people's life for a positive thing. And I started losing the identity of having to be a tough guy, losing the identity of being connected with anger and violence and fear. And I started living in what my passion is, and life started changing. Was it in a minute? No. Was it in a week? No. But was it over time? Yes. And so I go from this small town. I worked there probably 5 or 6 years, just training people. And then I made the move from that Southern California area to the Los Angeles, Hollywood area. And I moved there.
Why did you move there?
So a little insight is I also had a dream of getting into TV. I had a dream of getting into movies, to being an actor, but I was always too embarrassed to ever tell anybody. I was too embarrassed about what they would think. I wanted to get into fitness magazines, but I never told anybody. And so I kept this dream inside, and I moved to that area to be geographically close to that. And a little known thing is I was able to move to Hollywood, and then I got into training people that were pretty known. And then I also got fulfilling my dream of getting on TV. I was on every soap opera as an actor. I did. It was crazy, man.
What soap opera were you on?
Every one of them. I was on Days of Our Lives, Young and the Restless, General Hospital. It's where I met one of my most famous clients right now. He was an extra on the show, and I had a few speaking lines, and we met on that show as a comedian named Sebastian Maniscalco. I met him, Jesus, man, maybe 30 years ago now, over 20 years ago. So I was on all these shows, and then I found out also that wasn't my vocation. That wasn't my passion, because although it was fun and I had success in it, here I am acting on a show with Pam Anderson, or I'm in this movie. I did not get the satisfaction I did from helping people. It was a dream I had, and I went and investigated it, and I found out it wasn't the road for me, because I describe it as an Easter bunny in my book. It's all shiny and chocolatey on the outside, but for me, it was hollow on the inside. I didn't get the pleasure when I came home or I was done with a day of work. And, I feel like God, whatever you believe in, whether it's the universe, God, for me, it's God, kind of gives you signals. The universe gives you signals out there. I had been grinding away, doing this acting thing, going on auditions, scratching away to get a couple lines here, this role there, and everything. And I had good success. And then I made the decision when I went to an audition that I wanted to only focus on training. It gave me the best pleasure in my life to see people change, to get involved with them. And so I called my wife and I said, you know what? Today's my last audition. I feel like it's time for me to retire this. And I called my agents and I said, thank you so much for all you've done. I want to send lunch over to the office, but I'm not getting pleasure out of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I thanked them and I moved on. And within 24 hours, I got a call from my agent and said, look, we know that you uh, called and are done with acting, but you have an offer you don't have to audition for. There's a mini series, a director that you've worked with twice in the past is directing, and he wants you for the role. And it's a couple weeks worth of work, which is a good chunk of change. And you'll be on this mini series. And the mini series was about Jesus's life, which is crazy. And I said, you know what? If you had called me yesterday, I would have said, thank you. Let's do this. It's amazing. But I've made a decision that I'm happy with, and I'm going to have to pass. And it was the only time in my life that I was given an offer of a part that I didn't even have to audition for. And from that moment, my training went to the next level. My understanding of how to help people went to the next level. My understanding on how to get information and discern it for myself and then deliver it to other people went to the next level. And I've only focused on training. And so your original question through that long-winded answer was, how did you get involved with people that are well-known or you see on TV? I honestly think it's about just doing my job well by really making it important to me. It's important to me, and being in a geographic area where, look, if you're in upstate New York and you want blacktop done, I have 20 Italian friends that'll do your blacktop in 10 minutes, right? Because they're there. But if you're in Hollywood or you're in LA and you happen to do training well, people will hear about that. And it eventually got to all the different people, whether that was Ziggy Marley, who's won 7 or 8 Grammys, or Shakira, or whoever, people I've worked with. They hear about you, and then someone's making a phone call and they're asking you for your services. So, Brandon, I don't know if I necessarily did anything special than otherwise prioritize what I was trying to do, which was help other people. And then through prioritizing other people and who was sitting across the table from me, really just got the word out and got me, all the exposure I ever needed.
Wow. What a life you've lived, brother. And you're not even like in the prime of it yet. You have so much more life to live. So that Tony Robbins says something that really resonates with what you just said, which is, what's even worse than not getting what you've wanted or not achieving a dream is achieving the dream and realizing that it's not what you wanted after all. And there's a lot of people who get to where they wanted to go, and even though they felt those emotions of they get home from the long day of work and they're not happy, they stay there because they don't think that there is another option. And you've displayed that there is in fact another option, and you were teased with that other opportunity that you then had to say no to and really solidify the decision that you made. So I commend you for making that decision, because who knows what would have happened if you had stayed in the world that you were not happy in. And by the way, my brother, I'm going to link him to this episode. I don't really link him to show episodes, but I'm going to link him to this one because he's watched every episode of Days of Our Lives. And I'm going to be like, yeah, go ahead.
You want me to give him a tip to tell him what it was? There was a storyline where there was there was an actor on there named Franco. I think that was his character name. And I was brought in, and a bunch of Italian guys were brought in to take him out. And then it ended up being a false storyline where we really didn't take him out and you thought we did, but that's what I was Days of Our Lives. Yeah.
I think you'll remember that. He's got a great memory for stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's really cool. So it's great that you made that decision that you made. And I'm curious, from the A-listers that you've worked with, then these people that others look at from the outside and think, wow, they have everything. They've got the money, they've got the looks, they've got the career, they've got whatever it might be. What did you learn that you didn't expect about some of these people who were on top of the world? What did you learn that you didn't expect while working with them?
Sure. I had a realization that I should have known all along, but we're all human. We all need love. We all need to have a purpose. We all look for the same things in common. So we're all human beings, my brother. And in my book, I have a section called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And unfortunately, I worked or had encounters with people that were my childhood heroes. I'm talking like A-list celebrity action heroes, talk show hosts. And sometimes the persona that we see in public is not necessarily what's going on behind the scenes. And I try to give people, uh, I try to give them levity. I try to give them some, we all make mistakes. So I don't want to have one incident justify me saying this is person's not a good person or a bad person or whatever. We all make mistakes. But my heart was broken several times by people that were not so nice, and not necessarily not so nice to me, but maybe not so nice to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah. Oh, I don't go into naming these people in my book because I don't want to get sued, but just understand that I'm into martial arts. I've been training in martial arts since I was like 12. And there was one action hero that when he broke my heart on 3 different occasions, you could hear prepubescent John Petrelli at 13 years old, heart shattering in the background. And I'm like, and I literally almost had to fight. It's so crazy. I literally almost had to fight and call back my old ways to fight an A-list action hero because he was behaving so badly.
Wow.
And he was intoxicated and picking on people. And I go, in my mind, I'm like, this is the guy that saves people in the movies. This is the guy that helps people. He's supposed to be thwarting the evil villain in the Bat Cave or something. And here I am. I'm going to have to double leg take down him and put him on the ground. So it was it was surreal in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Wow.
We're all human, bro. We're all human, and we have good days and bad days. And I hope that was just a bad day.
Yeah. Wow. What a story. Fantastic. I could really dive into so many areas of that, but I really want to get to the most recent chapters of your life. So, did you train up until 2021 when you received the diagnosis for Guillain-Barre?
100%, and I'm training right now. I don't want to give anything away, but I'm back. But yeah, I trained right into then, and yeah, we can get into
you in 2021 when you tell me about who you were at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
You in the prime of your career, all these different accomplishments in your past, and how did this next chapter of Guillain-Barre even begin?
Yeah, great question. So in 2018, we moved from Los Angeles to Austin, Texas, and I restarted. I left my business there just for a better life for what I wanted for my family. I have 2 young boys, a beautiful wife. We wanted outdoors. We wanted nature. And Texas just said that to us. So we went to Texas. I started my business all over again, and I, it went crazy. I was busy again, just taking care of people, working full time, teaching jujitsu to kids, teaching boxing, training people. And in November 2021, my son got COVID, and we all ended up getting COVID. And it was like a blip on the radar screen for them. They had some sniffles. They were done. My wife got it, no problem. And then I had to quarantine for 10 days. And I'm a little bit of a nut, and I'm always working towards balance. But here I am, not getting any rest. I'm on the assault bike for an hour, doing projects around the house that don't even need to be done. And I ran myself into the ground. And I had a bad experience with COVID, lasted way longer than it probably should have. And the reason I bring that up is because I think it could have been linked to COVID, my GBS. But after I recover from COVID, I'm recovered from COVID for several weeks, and I start losing feeling in my feet, where my feet go numb and I can't feel them. And I don't verbalize it to anybody. I'm back to work, and I'm working 8-10 hour days, and my feet are numb. And that goes on for at least a week. And then my fingertips start going numb in my hands. And once again, I'm just like, okay, this is going to go away. And then I wake up in the morning, and my urinary stream was just, I had to pee, but I couldn't pee. And my vision started getting blurry. And so I tell my wife, Cheyenne, who's balance in my life, she is the yin to my yang. And I say, baby, I get home from work today about 5 o'clock. I'll be done. And maybe we should go. I have these things going on. Maybe we should go see a doctor. And God bless her. She goes, no, you're not going to work, and we're going to go to urgent care, and we're to get this checked out.
Wow.
And thank God she did, because I went to urgent care, and in urgent care, I ended up going unconscious. I fainted there, and I'm not a person that faints. And they start doing these tests, and I'm getting weaker. I describe it, Brandon, like a battery that's just getting drained. It's happening so rapidly. I'm having trouble now walking. And the urgent care goes, look, we don't want to scare you, but we think you may have an autoimmune disorder that is either MS, multiple sclerosis, or GBS. Now, I hadn't even heard of GBS, Guillain-Barre Syndrome. We don't have the ability to test for it here. We highly recommend, we're going to call the hospital right down the road, that you go get a spinal tap, and they take the protein fluid out of your spine and they can test to see if you have positive results for that protein. So we go to the hospital, and now I'm having trouble getting out of the car. I can't shake hands. Like, I don't have any strength in my hand. And for a guy that's been physical for so long, it's very, awakening. So they put me down to give me a spinal tap, and they give me the option. I live 1 mile from the hospital. The doctor says, you can wait here while we wait for the results, or you can go home if you're more comfortable at home. So we decide to go home. He says, if this numbness starts ascending up your body, right now I can't feel anything from my shins down. He goes, if it ascends up your body, you need to get in here immediately, because GBS, if you have it, will ascend up your body. It will shut your heart and lungs down. And just as you can't feel your feet, your heart and lungs will shut down and it'll be over. So I go home, I take a nap for 20 minutes. I wake up and I cannot feel anything now from below my knees at all. And I'm having trouble even standing. So my wife takes me back to the hospital, and in quick fashion, the numbness now ascends up my body to my hips, and they have to put me in a wheelchair. So they wheel me up to the ICU, and they're still waiting on the results from the Guillain-Barre test. And they wheel me up and they send me up. I think I'm on the 3rd floor in the ICU. And I see all people in different states of trauma in the ICU. And I know that a lot of these people are not going to make it out of the ICU. There's car accident victims. There's people dealing with different things in different stages of life. And I made a definitive decision when I was getting wheeled down there. I said, I don't know what this thing is that they call GBS is, but number one, I'm never going to complain about what's going on. Number two is I am going to find a way to get out of here, because the love I have for my family, the love I have for what I do is not going to end here. And I am going to learn something from this and pass it on. So they end up wheeling me down into isolation in the ICU, where I end up laying in bed for 10 days and having full paralysis of my body, where at one point I could only move my eyeballs. And the neurologist would come in my room and slide the glass door open. And, I couldn't even turn my head to greet them. But we made some decisions to do some things. And I don't want to discount Western medicine at all, because all of my doctors, all of my nurses were amazing, and they helped me out tremendously. But we made some decisions to do things so I would be in the right state of mind. Number one, I played music 24/7 that inspired me, that brought me happiness. And for me, that was Bob Marley and Ziggy Marley, dear friend of mine. And that played 24/7. Number two is my wife and I saw the food that was being delivered and available, and I wasn't going to eat French fries and chicken fingers, and I couldn't swallow anymore, and I definitely wasn't going to eat pureed French fries and chicken fingers. So my wife went home and she made me pureed organic foods. So now on a cellular level, I was getting nourished. On a music level, my mind was getting nourished. And then I prayed and I visualized. I did mental visualization of my body healing itself and my nerves healing themselves. Now, maybe that's mumbo jumbo to other people. I know that this helped me. If not anything, just keep me from having negative thoughts, because I had my mind preoccupied with other things that were working positively towards my active recovery. And I was asking because in GBS, your own body attacks your nerves. It believes there's a foreign entity, and it starts eating the myelin, which is the sheath around your nerves, and it makes it weaker and weaker. So I started asking my body to stop it. I started then demanding my body stop it. And then I was commanding my body to stop that, all in my head. So I had it working on music. I had it working on food. I had it working on my doctors and nurses helping me. I had it on visualization. And, there was a lot of rough times in the hospital. I soiled myself several times. Nothing like I fainted. I coded out when they were giving me an hour and 45-minute MRI I coded out, and every doctor on the floor had to come and bring me back. Um, I had a catheter. I mean, there's so many things that I can get into, but I realized at that moment, and you hear this often, that this wasn't happening to me, it was happening for me. And I made a decision that I was going to do something positive out of this.
Yeah.
Now, Brandon, I have dyslexia. I've never written anything in my life. I am much more street smart. I am much more work ethic than I am scholastically advanced. And I said, I got the inspiration to write a book, and through listening to a book while I was in the hospital. And the reason I say this is because I want people to know, I said at the beginning of our podcast, if I can do these things, you can do anything. If you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you want to have your own podcast, you want to be a professional athlete, if you're willing to put in the work, if you're willing to surround yourself with people, if you're willing to do it day after day, you can do anything. And I came out of the hospital after 10 days in a wheelchair. And at some points I could only move my fingers. But I didn't focus on what I couldn't do. I said, right now I can move my fingers and I can squeeze my hand. So I'm going to do that so many times until I do the next thing. And my wife had me in bed, and I graduated from the wheelchair to a walker. And while people were sleeping, I was rehabbing. I rehabbed 7 days a week. I went to a physical therapist 5 days a week, and I did 2 days on my own. And sometimes my goal was to walk to the couch, and I wouldn't make it. I would fall down on the way to the couch, but I got back up. I got back on the walker, and I continued. And I had little wins time after time. Whatever that little win was for that moment, I took it, and then I moved on.
So what does that look like today with Guillan-Barre? Did this recovery, first, how long did this recovery take to go from there to where you are now, which I'm curious to hear where you are now, what that looks like. And you got back into training. You told us that, which is amazing. What a story. And how do you manage this today? Is it something that goes away? Is it something that you work through for the rest of your life? What's it look like?
So it took me 3 months I was out of work for 3 months of rehabbing. I had incredible physical therapists that helped change my life, and my family and all the community came together, people delivering us food and everything. So in 3 months, I graduated from a wheelchair to that walker to a cane to walking. I mean, you could see stuff on social media where I couldn't even bend my knees, man. I'm in a walker. I went from 195 pounds to 170 pounds. I just was emaciated to where I'm at today. I'm never going to complain about anything. My feet are numb. I probably have some permanent nerve damage in my feet, but so what? I don't care. It's there to teach me something. It's there to remind me. And so that was 2021. I would say I'm probably like 95% of where I was before.
Wow.
I get up every day. I do my routines. I work out. I help people. I see 8 to 10 people a day. And my life is focused on letting people know that, man, adversity can come and you can handle it. If I wasn't arrested at 18, if I didn't go get locked up, if I didn't sleep on floors, if I didn't live on cans of tuna fish and boiled rice for months, when I walked into that ICU, or when I was wheelchaired into that ICU, I probably would not have been able to handle it. Everything that happened to me prior was preparing me for the time I was paralyzed.
Yes.
And so I had the fabric of who I was at that point had changed and evolved so much that if I was paralyzed at 20, I would have crumbled. If I was paralyzed at 30, I would have crumbled. Thank God those things happened to me. I can't take them back. So now I have to own them. And they helped me through the most adverse time of my life.
Wow. Let me tell you, brother, just from everything you've shared so far, I am a better man for having spoken with you today.
That's very kind, bro.
And I mean that from the heart, because you're a great guy. And I can feel that energy coming through, even though we're not physically in person. Hopefully one day we can be, but I can feel the energy coming through. And when you talk about these concepts of visualization and picturing your body healing itself, I 100% believe that made a profound difference in your recovery and in who you are. And like you said, everything before that helped you through that time. The preparation met opportunity, right? And that preparation led to the ultimate life-defining opportunity. And look what you did as a result. You wrote your book, and you back 95% to where you were. Like everything that where you are now is absolutely miraculous. And it's because you had these strategies and these tools. Now, these ideas of playing inspirational music and nourishing your body and visualization, are these part of your 4-step process to change your life, or is that a different process?
So it's weaved in there. Yeah, there are definitely shades of it. So I have a 4-step process, and these things are definitely integrated in there. But to define them very easily for people are, I believe you are what you think. My thoughts when I was in the hospital, what are my thoughts? I didn't want any negative thoughts coming in. So that's why I played music. That's why I did visualization. Every morning when I get up, look, I'd say this because of 30 years of being a trainer. You don't work out once and get in shape. It doesn't happen. You do 10 push-ups and you're now Charles Atlas. It's a process. So also it's a process for us mentally, right? If you think you can meditate or have positive thoughts once, that's amazing, but it's a start to build momentum to get something amazing. So every morning I get up, and for me, I do Wim Hof breathing. And I have 11, 12 minutes of breathing. It's free. It's on YouTube. And I have breathing, and I have my gratitudes and my prayers all encompassed in that breath work for 11 to 12 minutes.
Wow.
And I do that 99% of the time because my day, your day is dedicated to helping people. We're giving energy away. So I have to take care of myself first, and before I can take care of other people to my full capacity. And you need to do that if you're a doctor. You need to do that if you're a nurse or a fireman, someone that's helping, right? We all need to do that. And so number one is, I believe you are what your thoughts are. Let's control your thoughts. Let's set yourself up for success and start a routine of what your thoughts are. That could be 10 minutes of meditation. We all have 10 minutes. By the way, have you ever seen anybody talk as much as I have without taking a breath? I'm sorry to put you through that.
It's from that breath work.
And then I say number two is your daily habits. So after I have my thoughts and my prayers and my gratitudes, I work out. And for me, I try to do something difficult. I suck at swimming, so I may try to swim. I do jujitsu because it makes me feel, I try to get comfortable in an uncomfortable position. I work out. For you, it could be gardening, could be basketball, whatever, but you got to have daily habits that incorporate movement. We're not meant to sit in a chair 24/7. It's not natural. It's not healthy. So that's number two is your daily habits. Number one is your thoughts. Number three is, who do you surround yourself with? For me, once again, not blaming anybody, but as a teenager who I surround myself with, I wasn't strong enough to withstand the pressure of a peer group and make decisions that were viably good for me. So who do I surround myself with? For me, that is people I look up to, that inspire me, that maybe in a whole different field that I can relate to. And I don't want everybody to agree with me. I want to hear your point of view. Maybe you're going to teach me something that I would have never learned because I would have been too closed off. So I welcome other points of view, and I welcome people that hold me accountable, that go, you know what? No, John, that's your own BS. You need to move past that, and you need to look at it from this other point of view or whatever. So one, thoughts. Two is my daily activity. Three, who I surround myself with. And four is my plan. What's your plan? It doesn't have to be super well defined. You don't need to know every nook and cranny. But when I'm sitting paralyzed in the hospital, I had a vision and a plan to say, I need to write a book. I don't know how to write a book. I don't know who's going to help me. I can't even spell. I'm so bad at spelling that spell check goes, we don't have a clue what you're trying to say. But I had a plan. And then I started putting the pieces of those plan together like bricks on a house. And I started putting them together until we finally, a year later, had a book. And that book went out and became a #1 new release. What are the chances of that? I bet a better chance of hitting the lotto. But you can hit the lotto if you put in the work.
Yes. Brother, come on, man. I mean, that process. So again, for those listening, even if you rewind and listen to that over and over, you have the recipe for success. Number one, your thoughts, right? And as soon as you wake up, you said this is something that happens as soon as you wake up, as soon as the day begins. That's the time when a lot of those thoughts can creep in that you necessarily don't agree with or don't want. So by taking control of that first 15 minutes even of your day, and for you, even 10 to 11 minutes, with breathing and gratitude, and make it whatever works for you. If it's journaling about your wins from the day before, journaling about what you want your day to look like in a positive way, a magnificent outcome, then make it that. So number one was thoughts. Number two is having daily habits that incorporate movement, which is fantastic. For me, that is guitar. And I guess I am moving when I'm playing because I'm standing up, I'm practicing, it puts my mind, it activates my mind, and I'm
Yes.
working out as well. So that's another one. So having a few of those, or even just one, if you don't have any right now, starting with one and starting small, but those daily habits that incorporate movement. Number 3 is your tribe, the people you're surrounding yourself with. And that's one of my selfish takeaways from the podcast is I've gotten to meet over 300 incredible, inspirational people that I've gotten to talk to and ask questions to that I might not have ever met before. I doubt I would have ever met you if I wasn't the host of this show. So your tribe is so important. And number 4 is having that plan for the future. What do you want your compelling future to look like? And not even just what do you want it to look like, but what's an action step you can put behind it in order to truly make it a plan, right? A dream without a plan, or a goal without a plan, is simply a dream. So how can you make that a real goal with action? Beautiful, brother. Your book is titled Confessions of a Hollywood Trainer, and you've got this fantastic picture of you on the front cover, looking all jacked, looking swole, which is amazing. And I looked up, I just want to give, can you read the full title for everyone? Because that's just the first part of the title.
Yeah, you'd think I would remember. Hold on, let me grab a book.
Absolutely. And I'd love to see the title of it and the picture on the front for everyone too.
Yeah, so here's the book. By the way, this was done many years ago when I had hair and it was dark. And there was a photographer that understood lighting and everything. So it's Confessions of a Hollywood Trainer, the journey that changed my life and the lessons I've learned that can change yours. So it's literally, we got into a lot of it, but there are so many fine brushstrokes of things that happened in my life that I've learned. And I feel like, listen, the little bit you told me about you taking things from the podcast and learning, and you feel like you have your tribe. It's so relatable, man. And I feel connected to you because of that, because of your willingness to share. We are all human and we have these bonds that connect us. We're not that different. And the lessons that I've gone through, I hope in just exposing them and releasing the shame from my life, that other people can go, man, I can relate to that and I can get by that. And, we can do anything. We're all human beings. We're all built technically the same with a little bit of difference. So I just hope that people can read it and relate and find and navigate their way through whatever challenges they have.
Hell yeah. That's amazing. Guys, there's links in the description to go grab your copy of John's book. Again, the title for those who are just listening is Confessions of a Hollywood Trainer. If you even just Google that because you can't get to the description, it'll bring you right to the Amazon page to grab your copy. And it's a bestseller for a reason, guys. I mean, we've barely scraped the surface of what is in this book. So if you want to go into depth on every little area of John's life, not just to learn about John's life, but to take what he learned through those experiences and use it in your own life, then you'll be better off for it, because I know I'm better off for just this hour-long conversation. So, John, this has been a pleasure. I am so appreciative of you coming on the show and just being a great guest before the show and during the show. I mean, fantastic story, a fantastic person to back the story, and I'm grateful to you. Thank you very much, brother.
Thank you. And I'm grateful to you. And once again, your vehicle. And I found a new podcast to listen to now. I love what you do. And I'm so thankful this media brought us together, this medium, because I'll be listening. And man, I'm so appreciative. Thank you, Brandon.
Right back at you. Thank you, man.
You got it, brother.
I've got nothing to add to this conversation. It was beautiful. It was heartwarming. There was much conflict. And that conflict led John to where he is today and where he continues to go. Because if we've touched any part of this story, we've maybe covered 8 to 10% of this man's life story. I mean, he's got so much more to live, so much more to do. And I know there's more books on the way. There's more books on the horizon. There's no way that there couldn't be, right? So I have links in the description to John's book, Confessions of a Hollywood Trainer, as well as his social profile, so that you can check out the breathwork tutorial that he put on YouTube. I'll have a link to that in the description, as well as everything else that he's up to. Thank you so much for watching and listening. You're the reason that this podcast exists. I hope that this conversation helped you. If it did, my only ask for you is please share this show with just one other person who would find John's story inspirational and impactful. I know that I'm going to share it with a few people. My brother as one of those people, not just because John was on Days of Our Lives, but because I know this story would help him as well. And I know it would help you and many other people as well. So thank you so much for watching and listening. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.